thank everybody for showing up, particularly Jack and Greg, because I mean, organizing this particular train show has been kind of really weird because we had guests, then we didn't have guests, then we have guests again, and we didn't have guests, and then luckily Jack and Greg were both flexible enough to step in and help us out with this. Hopefully we can build up some credibility with the show, and that people will get to know it, and then we can get a lot more people to come, and I think that that'll help out a lot. So anyway, thanks for coming, everybody. Greg and Jack. We'll start out with Jack, and all times are fluid. So if Jack takes 20 minutes, then we'll slide right on into Greg, and if Jack takes 40 minutes, whoopee, then we'll slide into Greg. But either way, we'll get it done tonight. So thanks everybody for showing up, and let's see what we can do to move this on. And crap, I can figure out how to fix the screen here. Okay, I think there we fixed it. So I'll turn it over to Jack Dziadul for. I'm sure I just butchered that big time. There is Jack on here. Did he drop off?
Yeah, I don't see him.
All right. Well, let's be flexible, and then I guess we'll go to Greg, and then hopefully Jack will be back by that time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Greg Cassidy, who's our craftsman for the evening.
Okay, let me go ahead and start my screen share. Can you guys see that? It's a really ugly picture of me.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd call it ugly, but
Well, my hair was shorter.
I mean, it's definitely pixelated.
That's a brick pattern.
All right, we've got Jack
Oh, yes,
back,
it
so
is.
Go ahead and get Greg moving through.
You want me to continue, Chris?
Yes, please. Go ahead. Do what you need to do.
Okay. What I want to talk about tonight is just in building a lot of my models, every now and then I'm lucky enough to stumble across something that worked out right that I hadn't really learned from someone else, and if I can pass these along and it might work for somebody else, I like doing that. What I really want to do is thank all the people who have helped me. The most helpful one and a good friend that we lost this year was Jim Koshin, who ran Medford Trains. He primarily had laser cut for him Western Maryland structures, but he had a couple others that fit in as well. And he really got me started in building something to match a prototype. As well as Chris at Conowingo and Jeff Grove and Steve Milley at CCK and Railscale Models, and some of the other model makers that I've been fortunate enough to run into. Without these guys, we'd all be building in plastic or scratch building with lots of strip wood. First one I want to talk about is the way I did the roofing on a mail pouch barn. And this was one of the kits that Jim Koshin put out. He had seen this picture along the Western Maryland right-of-way with the mail pouch barn in it and wanted to put something out that was like that. He was very innovative in those kind of ways. So when I got the kit, I started doing research on it, coming up with, there's thousands of mail pouch barn photos you can find online. And it's a whole subgenre that I didn't get too involved in, but there's lots of it out there. I did find a couple of things that I really wanted to model on the one I was building, and that was the rusty roof that was coming apart and a door coming off the hinges. Jim's kit, one of the innovative things he did was he made a stencil for it on adhesive paper and had the mail pouch logo cut out. So you just paint the wall, put the stencil on it, and then spray the yellow and the white through it and have a nice mail pouch logo on the barn. Once I had done that, I knew I wanted to go ahead and try rusting some of the metal panels to go on the roof. And I had had a friend tell me about etching these with an etching solution. So I went ahead and ordered some of it online and thought I'd give it a try. So I cut the metal panels to size and got a bottle of this ferric chloride, which is kind of dangerous stuff, but they use it for etching circuit boards and other processes. If you're using metal panels, you just dump the metal panel in it and it'll start bubbling. It's oxidizing. And then you put it in a water bath with baking powder and then rinse water. And you end up getting these beautifully rusted panels that come out looking like that. And depending on how long you leave it in there, you can just have a little bit of rust on it, or it can eat it away like that one there. And it was just the effect that I was going after on this barn that I was building. So I was really pleased that that worked the way I'd been told it would, and that I didn't hurt myself using it. The next one that I'd like to talk about is the way I came up with some wood for a bridge that came out from Conowingo Models. Now, as Chris tells me, he was inspired on this by the swayback boxcar on John Allen's Gory and Defeated. And you mix that with a decaying covered bridge, and that's what you get. The kit itself, well, I did some research, and these are a couple of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mimicked on my kit. Some missing boards and some really dark wood. The kit goes together real well. It's got a substructure that already has the curves in it, and then you cover it with wood. Now, what I was just going to do initially was a barnwood process that I've used before on a couple other things. This is a two-part process that they sell at Michael's, and the first part is a stain, and after that dries, you put on part two, which is a gray wax, and then as it's drying, you kind of scrape it to get a wood grain texture in there. It actually works better on larger things like furniture, but I've been playing with it on small things. And it comes out like that upper photo there, but what I realized was some of the wax had seeped underneath it while I had it taped down, applying the wax. And then when I took those strips of wood and stained them with my black stain, I used Hunter line creosote stain, they ended up coming out looking like this. I cut them down to size, and it was the back of the wood that actually got an interesting effect, because some of the wax would seep underneath it, and so parts of it would absorb the stain and parts of it were already a mottled color, and it ended up coming out like this. And it was one of those happy accidents that I thought was just perfect for this bridge. So I ended up putting them on, and I'm going to end up putting it on a diorama that I have down there in the lower corner, along with one of the churches, and it's going to be setting in such a way that there's a reason that it's starting to collapse. The next one I want to talk about is doing a mock-up for a kit when you might be either scratch building it or dramatically changing it from the way it came. Jeff Grove put out this beautiful Carolina Craftsman kit of the Darden Company, which is based on Darden's Mill in Elkins, West Virginia. And the building is still standing, but it's gone through a number of changes. Now, Jeff's kit was designed to sit on a layout, so it's basically 3 stories on all 4 sides. But the actual structure has gone through a lot of changes. It's 3 stories on the front side and 2 stories on the back side, where the siding, the railroad siding, meets up with it. And I was building this for another guy's layout, and he said he wanted to have it 2 stories on the back side. He would cut into the layout and position it the way it was supposed to be. So I ended up taking all of the siding pieces that came with the kit. I scanned them into the computer, made cardboard templates of them, and put them together, marking how I was going to have to cut it to make it 2 stories on one side, 3 stories on the other. And I also had to make it a little bit shorter to fit in his layout. So the cardboard template helped with figuring all that. Then I just had to figure if I could cut some of the sheets that came with it, or if I had to get new siding and start with that. And it was a mix of both. I was able to use some of the siding that came with the kit, and I had to cut some new siding from scratch. So once I got it all put together, figured out where all the doors would end up going, I was able to make all the pieces, cut out all the door openings, and then put all the pieces together, some of them from the kit and some of them the scratch-built ones that I had made. And once it was all put together, fortunately everything worked out, and he has a kit now that's 3 stories on the front side and 2 stories on the back. And this is the Elkins station that was in the same town. This one was something where I tried a couple new products that had come on the market. One of them is called a distress crayon, and the other one is called a Copic marker. This is a wonderful kit that Jeff Grove put out. It's a very large structure that's based on the Elkins station that was built there in 1907, I think. And it's all brick, and I wanted to really capture the mortar in the brick, but it's laser cut brick. And unlike plastic brick, laser cut brick sometimes can have the mortar real narrow or real wide, depending on how the wood is cut. And with these, using some of the other techniques that you might use, it wasn't quite working. Using a thin wash of paint or something else, it wasn't going into the cracks. I had used these distress crayons before, and what they are, they're kind of like a wax crayon, but they're actually a water-reactive pigment. And you rub it on the coating there, and then I used a wet brush to move it around. It would get pushed into the little cracks, and then you'd wipe it off with a rag, and you'd get all your mortar inside the brick lines. And it worked pretty good. I also used it for the base of the station that came with it. And that picture shows the before and after sections and how well it went into the gaps. The other thing that I tried on this were Copic markers, and they're a alcohol-based ink marker that you can use to kind of put a wash over something. They come in a variety of colors. Most of the ones I use are grays and browns, and I use them on some of the stonework that came with this. And you can put it over it, and depending on how much you put on, you can make it lighter or darker. And if you put on a lighter one and then a darker one, you can mix them together to get a third shade. They're very flexible in how they work. And I was very pleased with the way those results came out as well. And the station came out looking quite nice. This is one of the ones that I put people inside, and unfortunately I had to glue the roof on, so they're trapped in there now. They can't get back out. The next one I want to talk about is, this is something that I built in answer to a number of people's questions. I had been taking some of my models to shows, and people who were unfamiliar with wooden structures would come by and look at a diorama and say, well, how do you make the wooden kits? What are they made out of? How do you make the diorama? And I thought, well, you know, I should have something to show them. So I went ahead and took one of these kits that I had. It's just a little train order office, and I went ahead and cut part of it away as I was building it, and then put it on a diorama where I showed all the different layers of how you would make a diorama. And so now I take this to shows with me, and if somebody says, well, how do you make those? I'll just show them this and say, well, this is how the wooden structures are made. You see how they're just a thin wood and they're glued together. And this is how you make the diorama. You take a piece of foam core or something else and you paint it, and you put on gravel or dirt, and then you put on landscaping, and they can see how they're made. This one was a Williamsport train order office, and I built 2 of these. These are the same kits. It's just one was put out by Carolina Craftsman Kits, the other one was put out by Medford Trains. And one of the things that's distinctive about this station on the Western Maryland line it had these crazy 24/4 windows. It's the only station that had them. And none of the available windows would match that. The kits come with a basic 4/4, and they look fine in the kit, but I wanted to try and capture that idyllic window that one station had. So I called up Steve Milley at Railscale Models and said, is it possible for you to custom cut some windows? And he said, sure, just give me the measurements. And about a week later, these arrived, and he nailed it. They're perfect. And I got a set of them, and Jeff Grove got a set for the kit that he sent me to work on. Now, one of the things, the kit was made to have a Tichy window put in, which comes with the window frame and the sill and everything. So just getting these windows cut from Railscale meant that I had to make the window frame. So I got the smallest wood that I had on my workbench and put a little window frame inside the opening in the wood, made sure that it worked and that the window would fit in, and that was the way that I could put the window in, have it the proper setback. So I painted up a bunch of those, the color that they were in the actual station, built my framing around them, put a window sill on it, and now they're held in place the same way that an actual window would be in a real building. And so both kits were done, and they have that iconic 24/4 windows in them now. And that's all thanks to just having a friend in the laser cutting business that you can call on and have some custom work done. Last thing that I want to show here real quick is this is a rooftop HVAC system that Railscale Models puts out. I had an old plastic building on my layout that I said, you know, it could use a little bit more on the roof than I had put on it back 35 years ago or whenever I made it. So I got one of these, and it's a real nice little kit that's made up of 3D printed pieces for all of the little angles and connections and stuff, and then they just use evergreen shapes for connecting them, tubes and squares and rectangles. But it can't just sit by itself. It has to be held up with bracketing. So they give you some L brackets, and they suggest that you bend them so that they hold it up. Well, I tried one, and I cut a 90-degree notch in it and bent it, and it works fine. And I said, okay, I just have to do about 15 of those. Well, I cut all of the L girder to size, and then realized, you know, cutting two 45-degree angles is going to be really hard. Am I going to have to get out my protractor? How am I going to do this? And what I realized, I don't have to cut two 45-degree angles. The human eye, if you try and look at an angle, you might see if it's somewhere near 40 to 50, but you're not going to hit 45. But it's very easy for us to get a 90-degree angle. So all I had to do was make one cut, like in the upper picture, and then make a second cut at 90 degrees to that cut. It didn't matter if they were both 45 as long as they were both 90. And that's a lot easier for the human eye to judge. So once I cut all of them, I bent them and glued them together, and now they're holding up all of the ducting. And it just, once I realized I didn't have to make those perfect 45-degree angle cuts, I only had to make a 90-degree cut, it just made it so much simpler. And a few of those processes that I was talking about, the using the Copic marker and the distress crayons and using the ferric chloride for etching, I've got how-to videos on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel. I also have a lot of build videos for a lot of the buildings that I've put together. If you go to YouTube and just search Greg Cassidy, I'm the first one that shows up. So I'd love for people to go and take a look and see if any of these can help inspire them to use any of these products. So, Chris, that's the end of me.
All right, thanks. That was a lot. I think that's the second version of that show that I've seen, and I'm just blown away by it. So.
Well, thanks. I rushed through it. I didn't want Jack to be left with 5 minutes or anything. So.
Oh no, we actually when I signed up for this session, actually at the last session, they said, if you sign up right now, we'll waive the 40 minutes. I was like, perfect. So I had to scramble and find a good date. So
Good.
I guess we can turn it over to Jack from Ipswich Hobbies.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. As Dylan has figured out, maybe the rest of you have seen as well, I've been having terrible internet connections on my laptop. I have my PowerPoint on my second screen connected to my laptop, but I've had to resort to opening up my iPad. So I will talk through my PowerPoint without having the screen share opportunity. But let's see if I can. I guess you can see me okay, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Do you need me to pull up your presentation on my end, or are you good?
If you can pull it up in your end, that'll, sure.
All right.
I think, Dylan, I got disconnected from my laptop 4 or 5 times. So, Chris, you're pulling it up?
All right.
Well, I emailed it to you earlier.
Yep, I've got it open. I just got to get back to Zoom real quick here.
Oh, okay.
All right, and here we go.
Here we go. That's we're gonna. I guess you have to control it. Can you
Right.
scroll to the first slide?
There we go.
Oh, there we go. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Good. My name is Jack Dziadul. For a few on the Zoom who do not know me, I just retired 2 years ago and live in North Carolina, but I grew up in Massachusetts. And whenever I go back for vacations, which until this year has been 2 weeks almost every summer, and I've always done what I call industrial archaeology. In other words, I traipse around the old Boston and Maine lines and try to capture with some photographs any old buildings that I could find that I might be able to use or model someday on my model railroad. So this presentation is basically an introduction as to how I went from just being, an amateur or hobbyist with or starting out with a model railroad. How did I end up becoming a manufacturer? Well, I had built a number of bar mills and Bola Edgerly kits. I really liked the work that those folks did, but they didn't always have the structure that I was looking for. And I was trying to do something that was as prototypical as I could get it for, and I use the term here, what's my passion, what's your passion? My interest was the Boston and Maine Railroad. And so I was focused on photographing and meeting as many people as I could who knew about the Boston and Maine Railroad. And I enjoyed the structure building aspect of the hobby more than operations. And bullet point number 3 reminds me of Jim Keller was always asking, when are you done? Okay. And obviously you're done when it's close enough to being plausible. So what's your own passion? Mine's B&M, as I said. Favorite era. Boston and Maine operated right up to 1980 when it finally was taken over by Guilford and the B&M color scheme all started to go away. But I modeled 1956 because I have the new McGinnis paint schemes. I had the end of steam. I had first generation diesels. I had RDCs. I had both closed and open vestibule heavyweights. So 1956 was a magic year where you can model just about anything and get away with it. It was all plausible. Next slide, please. One of the buildings that I kept photographing was the Rockport Freight House. This is Rockport, Massachusetts. It looks even worse today than it did in that photograph that I took a few years ago. The building is vacant. It's owned by the guy that owns a hardware store nearby. I was able to get inside of it. I met some B&M modelers who lived in Rockport. We were able to get the key and take some detailed photographs and measurements of the building. And I don't know if this will work at all, Chris, but I wanted to sort of go back and forth from the PowerPoint to show you the model that I ended up with.
All right, let me see if I can get
Is it
there.
possible to minimize the screen just for a sec?
Yeah, let me see if I can stop the screen sharing.
Okay. If it gets to be too cumbersome, we can either skip that or just do the display models at the end.
Let's go back to the screen.
We can just do them at the end, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, that way I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, you know what? There we go. All right, I got it.
All right.
Got to be
Well, I
smart in
was
the
just going
program.
to show the display. This is the first kit that I produced. As it turned out, you know, Steve Miller's name has been mentioned a few times already by Chris and Greg and others. Steve was a friend of mine. He used to live not too far away from me in suburban Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am. Steve told me that, you know, he bought a laser. So, oh, wonderful, great. And I shared with him what I had in mind doing. And so Steve started doing the CAD work and the cutting for me. And we produced this as kit number 1, or revisions kit number 13 for Rockport Freight House. So with Steve's help, that was the launch of Ipswich Hobbies, doing this first kit. Okay, can we go back, Steve?
Okay, so we're at the baggage shed.
Oh, and no, go back one more.
All right,
Union Freight House.
there we go.
Driving through New Hampshire, I just stumbled across the Heritage Park Museum. They had a renovated passenger depot with beautiful museum exhibits inside the depot. Well, it turned out across the street from the depot was this old freight house. I was able to get inside the freight house, and there's a model railroad club that operates inside the freight house. And we had the gentleman in touch with Jim a little while ago, and Jim Callow's been working with those folks as well now. So we've expanded our friendship with that. But in any event, I talked to Bill Gaver. He was my primary contact. And the folks over there renovated the station, and they gave me some drawings that they used during the construction, plus some ICC evaluation data. And what I'm holding up now, well, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt the, take a chance in interrupting the PowerPoint again. At the end, I will show you how I have created an HO scale model of that kit as well as N scale. Okay, next slide.
All right.
Call from card number 0. Call from
Okay,
number 0.
somebody needs to go to mute, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
We okay?
Yeah.
Okay, baggage shed. I was reading a book about lost railroads of New England. And they mentioned that there was an old baggage shed now private, behind a private home in Ipswich, Massachusetts. So I was able to track that down, and the photograph on the lower right is what the REA baggage shed looks like today. And the top photograph is what I've cropped and pulled out of an old Depot Square photograph. So you can obviously see that, you know, oops, we lost it.
Oh.
Gotta go back. There we
Sorry.
go. You can actually see the, you know, the door and the window, everything has been modernized in it. But they kept the trim, changed the color. Obviously, they got rid of that, the lower section, which was just a basement. In the top photograph, you see a little baggage cart on the left. This REA shed did not abut the tracks. They actually had to load freight and baggage onto one of the REA baggage carts and wheel it over to the trains. And I'll show you that version in the HO scale later on after the PowerPoint slide. One thing that I'll point out is that I never had a photograph showing the other sides of this building. When I looked at the prototype, it's just a blank wall. But of course, he abuts up to the neighbor. As you can see, there's probably 12 inches between the two buildings. So at some point, whatever was on the original backside of that wall was all boarded up. The next slide, Chris, please. There you go.
Yep.
I first stumbled across this crossing shanty behind an antique store in Raleigh, Massachusetts. Usually on my trips, I spend at least one full day at the B&M Historical Society archives. And I had found a picture of a shanty that looked exactly like this, only the smoke jack at the roof was in a different position. But stumbling across this behind an antique store in Raleigh, I was, talked to the owner, and he told me that it was owned by Raleigh Historical Society, and they were just at the antique shop because they had nowhere else to put it. But they had restored it, at least repainted it. The inside was kind of a mess and full of junk. Okay, we can move on. Next slide, Chris. This is a section house. There were two of these in Ipswich. And you can see that I was able to take a few photographs, and it was just about collapsed at the time of this photograph. You see that same smoke jack is on the roof. And Jim Boakland he lives in New Hampshire now, but he models eastern route of the B&M. He actually measured that building. And no, I didn't model the roof in that shape. I didn't do the saddle shape to it. But I recreated that using my photographs and a few of James's photographs and James's measurements. And you'll see that at the end of the display. Okay, Chris, next. That building, by the way, is all gone now. It's all demolished. I had a table at a train show here in North Carolina, and some of the folks from the New Hope Railroad Museum saw some of my models, and they asked if I wouldn't do a model of a building that they relocated from Goldston, North Carolina, to their museum in New Hope, North Carolina. That certainly made a lot of sense to me because it's only 10 miles away from where I live. So I will show you, this, by the way, was a combination depot. It's a standard plan of the Southern Railroad. Originally, the Cape Fear and Yadkin Valley eventually became Southern Railroad. But that ended up being moved away from the rails into, some companies' backyard, used as storage. You can see there's a metal roof on this, so they at least had enough sense to put a new roof on, and it preserved the building. And you will see my rendition of that model in a few minutes. Okay, next slide. There you go. Okay. And by the way, that Goldston Depot was my first venture into a North Carolina kit. The first one I did that was not a Boston, Maine theme structure. The folks at the North Carolina Train Museum would tell me that they have knowledge of a shed in nearby Goldston, and they were going to eventually move that to their campus. Well, I wanted to get moving on creating a model of it, so I just, frankly, this is the only time I'll admit to trespassing. I just couldn't get in touch with the owner, so I just went out there and took some photographs, and I used Kevin, my friend Kevin's measurements. He had measured the building previously, and you'll see that that is my second North Carolina-based kit. Okay, next one, Chris.
Geez, I'll get the direction right one of these days.
Okay. And the guys down this way, very active in the Historical Society, the Southern Historical Society, plus some of the predecessor lines. So this is one that'll be coming probably next spring. It's another Southern style depot. That'll be a complicated one because of the roof. Okay, next slide. This one is very interesting. This is a commissary that no longer exists and created some challenges because I only had 2 photographs of this building, both from the exact same position. I think the photographer 20 years apart took the same picture. The other picture that I have doesn't have all the debris on the dock, but it's essentially the same angles. So I've been working, trying to figure out how to measure that accurately, and I'm pretty close to doing that. And using, I just got the poor man's Photoshop. It's called Affinity photo software, and that allows you to turn the building so you can look at it straight on. And that'll help me to get a more accurate measurement than just trying to count bricks or count door heights. So that is probably going to be a kit that'll be ready by year end. That'll be the first of what I will call my Boston series. Okay, next one, Chris. There you go. I bought the plans for a potato house. You've all seen the state of Maine red, white, and blue paint schemes on freight cars. Well, if you're modeling New England, those cars need to go somewhere. So I have a bunch of those red, white, and blue, the BAR cars, and they ended up going to this, what they call the Potato Freight House at the Mystic Yard in Boston. There were actually 2 so-called potato houses. One was brick, one's frame. And so I was able to purchase copies of the plans from the B&M Historical Society. So that's one kit that I'll be working on as well. Next slide. I tried, this is a sort of a memory from when I grew up. We used to get our fruits, vegetables, Christmas trees, everything else from this farm stand up in Massachusetts. This was demolished just a few years ago to make way for a highway expansion. But I was able to take a few photographs before I built that. And I think that is the last of my PowerPoint slides. Chris, see if that's, oh, yeah. Oh, another one, yeah. Yeah, that's a mock-up. The top photo shows you the actual photograph of maybe 2 years ago. That's the house I grew up in. First 5 years of my life were in that house. And the bottom photograph shows a little bit of a mock-up. What I did is I just took a picture of that straight on. Because of the nearness of homes on either side and in the back, I couldn't get great photographs on the other angles, but at least on this angle. And I just pasted that photograph, or resized it, pasted it to start to build a mock-up of that structure. So I'll be doing a kit of that, and I'll start to come out with some residential structures. One thing that I learned in doing that model is that I've got some, from Bollinger and Monster Model Works, both produce laser cut cedar siding, and neither one of them have the same size shingle. So, which was interesting because that photograph is a photograph of the actual building resized to the actual size of that structure. And it turns out that the Monster Model Works sheet that I bought is their shingles are about twice the size of what this would indicate. So interesting. Anyway, next slide. This is the last slide. Yeah, everybody's interested. Well, where do you get your stuff? On the left side is a list of some of the folks that I'm aware of who will do custom cutting of model, you know, if you want to have some custom laser cut work done. I'm familiar with Bollinger, Foggy Mountain, Motrac, and obviously rail scale models. I'm not familiar with Davis Laser and Automated Artist, but I've seen them at trade shows or other events, and I've chatted with them, but I've never seen their work yet. On the right side, there's just some of my sources. I try to add some details to my structures, and we'll talk a little bit about that because I like a little bit of feedback from you as well. And the feedback, that's the end of my slides. So Chris, you can get rid of the slides.
All right, I'll stop screen sharing then.
All right, and I'll chat a little bit while you're taking care of that business. Some folks want to see a display model that is exactly what is in the kit. Some folks want to see what a kit can look like. In other words, loaded with detail, weathered, and so forth. So I'd be curious to have some feedback from you as I show a few things. Now, the first one that I will show, I'll try to go in the order that I had the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, I was hoping to be able to show, here's the prototype photograph, and here's the rendition of it. But this is the Rockport Freight House. And this is what it ended up looking like. One thing I left out intentionally, at first unintentionally, but then I did it again in InScale and did it intentionally. You'll notice the beautiful brick piers. Those are laser cut bricks on all four sides. And I want to show those under this auto ramp. They used to unload auto box cars over here, drive them down this ramp, and take them to an auto dealer in Rockport. So that would be a nice, you know, line side industry for a little bit of operational detail. After I did this, I found an older photograph that actually had this vertical skirting board go all the way around. So the new kits, I'm adding a little bit of extra vertical boarding, so a modeler can either, you know, do it per prototype or leave it as it looks today, all falling apart and having a lot of the skirting missing, because leaving some of the skirting off at least shows off this beautiful detail over here for the dock. This is the Union Freight House, Union, New Hampshire, part of the Wakefield Heritage Park. And today, what you would see if you went there, they have a door, a handicap access with a ramp down this way. This rail is gone. The dock is gone, as you might recall from seeing the photograph. There's a main line that's still here, and NHS, New Hampshire North Coast, is still running trains every single day. They have a unit train taking gravel to Boston, sand and gravel into Boston. And at the end of the day, you'll see that same train coming back with all kinds of empty hoppers, plus some mixed freight, going to, I think it's Ossipee, is where they have the gravel pit, Ossipee, New Hampshire. So that's a rendition of this. And I have this in HO plus N, and by year end, it will also be available in O scale.
What's the name of your company, and do you have a website?
Yes, Ipswich Hobbies, IPSWICH, IpswichHobbies.com.
Let's see.
Always happy to put a shameless plug in. These three buildings I put on this little diorama. The first one is the Crossing Shanty, which is available in HO as well as N scale. And you'll note the smoke jack on the roof of this Crossing Shanty, and that same smoke jack on the section house. I had Rusty Stumps laser 3D print these smoke jacks for me. And these two buildings are available in scale, and we'll both, I already have the cuttings and starting working on the test builds of the O scale on these two buildings. This is the REA shed that you might recall that is now painted blue behind Dunkin' Donuts, used as storage in Ipswich. One thing that I found out, again, a later photograph, I found out that there originally was a freight door on the other side, which is logical because you had a freight door on the track side. And very logically, there would have been a freight door on the truck side, on the street side. But obviously, modern day, that's all boarded over. So if I do a new rendition or an update on this kit, I'll have to put in the second door. You recall the old, my first North Carolina kit, that old gray falling down depot, Southern Depot? This is what it looks like today in the Southern colors. If you went to the museum site today, you would see it's all painted up in the original Southern Railroad colors. And the semaphore is back up. And that was a great kit. I had to rush getting that done because the museum had a fundraiser last September. Originally, it was going to come out in April 2020. But they had a fundraiser last September, so they asked me to hurry up with the kit. So they gave me a table, and I had a captured audience, and I only had produced 10 of these, sold all 10 out right off the bat. So we did a second run of that kit. So that was nice. So I'll end up doing that in O scale, and it's already available in N scale. This is that small shed that I was telling you about. That's available in O, and as well as N scale, rather, NHL, not an O. That's basically just a tiny little kit. It's nice to have inexpensive kits too. You saw this photograph earlier. That's my mock-up of the house that I grew up in. Some things, on the drawing boards, and if you might remember this, I did an article in the Mid-Eastern Region Local recently about this one. This is a Bollinger Edgerly kit called the Clam Box. It's based upon an actual seafood joint in Ipswich, Massachusetts. Now, this is based upon the 1935 footprint. Decades ago, probably the 1950s, there was an addition put on, just a screen porch, eventually became an air-conditioned or, a larger screen porch. And I talked to Jill and Brian Bollinger about this, and they said, well, they sold this kit to Jeff Adam at Motrac. Jeff is planning to re-release this kit. And I mentioned to both the Bollinger folks as well as to Jeff Adam that I will probably someday, maybe next year, come out with this kit, but I'm not going to produce something that somebody's already done, certainly without talking to them anyway. But I've explained to them that what I'm doing is a modern era of it, to show the dining room addition to it. So the kit that I come out with, if I actually end up doing it, will actually be a more modern, or if you want to call 1950s, more modern version of this 1935 kit. So it's important to a small world. We need to communicate with each other. So I want to, sometimes you hear some bad stories where people copy other people's designs or ideas, and I'm not interested in that. So it's important to share information that way. And by the way, I don't make a whole lot of money on this. I don't make any money on it. I'm doing it because I'm retired and I enjoy doing it. And my whole philosophy is I'm not into really kit bashing or being creative with kits like probably most of the world is. My interest is creating prototype structures that are plausible renditions. So if you want to model the Southern Railway or Boston, Maine or something like that, my kits are there for you for that. But some of the kits are so generic. A freight house has got, 4 walls and a roof. Crossing shanties are crossing shanty. All you have to do is change the paint scheme on these, and they'll work almost anywhere.
Mhm. Jack, can I ask,
Yes.
what do you usually use for the base for your little dioramas? Are you using Gator board?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That
Yep.
stuff's great.
Yeah.
Exactly what it is. It cuts easily and obviously nice and flat. And if I got time, I can show you another couple of quick things that I'm working on. You let me know, Chris, if I have time. or
Sure,
not.
take as much time as you want.
Okay, don't go in.
Greg, let me ask you a question while he's doing that. The barn that you showed, that you used the stencil to paint on the mail pouch,
Yes.
does anybody make stencils?
Well, I know Jim Koshin had those made specifically for that kit, and I built 2 of them, one for myself, and another one went to Mr. Taylor here for the Good Time Coal Hauling group. I think Chris has been looking into getting stencils made. Do you want to answer that, Chris?
Yeah, I actually talked to Steve Milley a little bit about it, and what he recommended was have the stencils cut in Manila. So theoretically, as long as you've got a laser cutter, you can do that. But what I found is that, of course, I just tried it with a paintbrush, and it didn't come out very well. So I'm not sure if maybe it needs to be sprayed or whether I need to basically, I think you had talked earlier today, I think maybe, about putting an adhesive on there so it sticks to that surface while you spray it or paint it, whatever. But that's the nut that I'm trying to crack right now, is because if I get into a little bit of rolling stock, I want to be able to release some either some decals, or I would actually prefer a stencil if I could figure out.
Well, the ones that Jim had made on that, and I don't know whether Jeff Grove is likely the one who cut those, because I think he cut the kit. It was an adhesive-backed paper that he cut the stencil in. So all you had to do was peel the back off, stick it on the kit, and then you could spray your brush because it was going to stick really well. Now, that was on a pretty flat piece of wood. It was just scribed. It wasn't clapboard or anything. I'm sure the type of surface you're putting it over is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think the type of paper you use can make a difference as well, and the age of the paper. The first kit I did was right after it was produced, and that peeled off after I painted it very easily. The second one I did, the paper was a few years old, and it was much harder to peel off.
Chris, this company you're talking about in the Philippines, do they actually make the stencils for you?
No, it was Steve Milley.
Ah, okay.
But if you cut it on manila paper,
Ah, okay.
like file folders.
Yeah.
Yeah, he recommended file folders because it's a little thicker material, so it's got some more, it's less likely to bend on you.
And
Now,
then you
Chris-
put some kind, and then what, double-sided tape on the back of it?
Yeah, I think that's what he was doing.
Now, Chris, there is a company that still makes dry transfers. You see them in Model Railroad, and I know you see them in Model Railroad Hobbyist. And it's been probably 6 years ago, but I ordered some just random numbers that were rub-on stencils, and they did great. I'll look up and see if I can find the name of the company.
Yeah,
Was it
I tried Clover House because they were known for that sort of thing, but I got an email back and he said that he doesn't. He's basically just selling what he's got. He's not doing anything new.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
You know what, Chris?
He did recommend Cedar Leaf, I think it was.
That's it, Cedar Leaf.
Okay.
There you go. if with the vanilla stencil, have you ever tried putting it down and then using like a sponge with paint or even a stencil brush?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I could give that a try.
Yes, because that might work. I mean, regular years ago in the 80s with the country decorating thing, I did a lot of stenciling on the walls in my old house. And yeah, I mean, just a small sponge or even a stencil brush, small stencil brush, like a brush or something might work nicely.
Yeah, well, I'll have to give that a try.
All right. And Jim, I sent you my email in a private chat so you can get a hold of me about MRU.
What is the private chat?
Oh, you can click down the bottom of the screen. There should be a chat icon.
I don't have it. I'm on an iPad.
Oh, okay. Well, my email is Barry,
Hold on.
Okay, yeah, write it down.
Okay, Barry, Barry.
Barry dot Rosiers, ROS as in Sam, IER @gmail.com.
BARRY dot ROSIE @gmail.
IER @gmail.
IER.
Yeah. And you can look up Model Railroad University on Facebook too and message
Okay.
us through there too as
Hey,
well.
Barry, on the iPad, there's 3 little dots on the lower right-hand corner. You can touch that and go to chat.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I've never used Zoom on an iPad, so
Sorry to interrupt.
Well,
that's all right. Thanks, guys.
I don't have that. All I've got is my picture on the right side at the very bottom. And then that's it. I'm just seeing, whoever's talking.
So if you touch the screen, do you have some other things pop up? Video,
That's-
participants, 3 dots.
I have, let me see. I've got participants up at the top, and then I've got more, 3 dots.
Yeah, that's the one.
but-
Mhm.
I'm on an iPad and I was able to get into chat. The 3
Got it,
dots. does
chat.
it.
Okay, I just found chat. Thank you
There you
so
go.
much.
Jim, you're pretty chatty already.
Got it. Geez, my God, I'm becoming an expert.
Yeah, buddy.
You're still ahead of me.
I don't think so.
My
Chris, I just-
laptop has a pony motor.
Listen,
Chris, I
How
just
about
had
a
one more show and
steam
tell
donkey?
when you get a chance.
All right, yeah,
Chris-
let's flip over and let Jack finish out what he has to say for us.
Okay, now this is one other kit that I'm working on that should be available by year end. This is based upon the Sanford, it's called the Union Station at Sanford, way back in the day, as they say. And this is basically going to be laser cut brick walls. I've been playing around, experimenting, trying to get the colors right. And the modern version of this, interestingly, has a concrete pad around the depot
Mhm.
with a brick pattern, all these little lines.
Uh-huh.
Those are all bricked. So I've hand painted each of those rectangles with it. If you went out today, you'd see a concrete area with bricks interlaid into squares. So it's pretty neat. Or
That is
a model
interesting.
model can always flip it over and just paint it black or gray and have pavement instead. But
Jack, I think that's really interesting, having the concrete pavers with the brick surrounding them.
Yeah,
Nice
It
detail.
reminds me of that Elkin station I did that was all brick, but that's
God, yeah.
more interesting and probably more complicated to cut and to paint.
a lot of masking.
Yeah.
and careful painting. And there are 5 similar depots that still exist down in Georgia and South Carolina, similar to this one that's in Sanford. Okay, Chris, I'm done.
All right. Well, I guess now's the time we pop a cold one if you have one handy, or look like some people have been partaking already. But anyway, so we can open it up for questions now.
Well, I know one thing that Jack had mentioned before he started showing his kits was kind of a discussion that I've had with a couple other people, and I might have mentioned it with you, Chris, but I know I talked to Jeff about it. Model manufacturers, and I consider anybody who either does their own cutting or designs and has somebody else cut the kits for them, but they sell it under their name, to be a manufacturer. Advertising their products, you kind of see two trains of thought. One would be building the model, pretty much following the directions, putting painting on it to be appropriate for whatever it is, but that's pretty much what you're showing on the box. And you go to the other extreme, say a kit like a Foscale or something, where you have an incredible master modeler who is weathering it, putting in all the details, and actually making a scene that is an award-winning scene. And both of them are kind of appropriate, but it's almost like two trains of thought. And I wonder, since we have a couple model manufacturers here, what your thoughts are on that.
What I hear from some folks is that a well-weathered, detailed display model is intimidating to people. A lot of the newer folks who are not experienced Craftsman kit builders are basically either going to spend, $50, $80, $100 or more, a couple of $100 sometimes, and they just are afraid to either break it or to try it, or they don't think they can reach that standard.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's a good idea to have a variety of kits at lower price range. And the approach that I've taken is I not in every case I've done this, but I try to only have details on the kit that I include within the package. And I just lightly weather buildings. Because sometimes you get asked very elementary questions like, do you have to paint it? Does it come already painted? That's people just don't know. They used to a plastic kit. It comes molded in 3 color. What more do you want?
Yeah. Well, and I have to admit that this isn't unique to Craftsman kits. I mean, you could see a Walther's kit and a Lifelike kit, and the Lifelike kit on the box is going to pretty much show it just glued together, but Walther's will do marginal weathering and do details and backdrops and stuff like that to enhance it.
And you have to read the fine print that says figures and autos not included. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I can't say I've had anyone ask me, does it come painted yet? That's I don't know what to say.
Well, I can attest from back, when I used to plastic scratch build stuff, and then my buddy Mike got me going to the fine scale expos. And up until then, I was hesitant to touch a Craftsman kit because just what Jack and Craig have said, they looked intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I learned how to do water by taking a class with Dave Frary, doing attending, teaching, and then running Model Railroad University. We've got to know all the Craftsman manufacturers that go to Amherst every year. We got to be friends with people like Doug, Jimmy Deignan, Brian and Jill. So we actually had Doug teach one year weathering techniques, and I always learn from these guys, and it's broken my thought of Craftsman kits are impossible to build. I mean, I just saw a photograph of a structure online, and I did it and just made it out of cereal box printed textures. I cut like the rafters and stuff and the door and window on my Cricut. First time I've ever done that.
Yeah.
I think it came out great.
Yep.
And so I'm intimidated as used to be, but I understand what Jack's saying. This can intimidate people.
Well, what my group, the Good Time Coal Hauling modelers, do is that's the people we pinpoint, the people that's scared and stuff like that, and we'll take them in, show them how to, and you know, we push you in the deep end of the pool. The first kits you buy are Craftsman kits, and Greg, I know Greg's heard this before, but you know, my motto is if you build a Craftsman kit and it's not in square, and you know, it's whether the dog snot out of it, it'll be all right.
Yeah, I like the dog snot.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I put out a kit, for the most part, you don't see much weathering, if any at all, on it. I try to basically just provide a basic kit. So basically, in a form, it's a blank canvas. Do what you want with it. Some of these things you can do a little bit with. Some things you can do a lot with. It all just depends on your imagination. That's the whole point. Is I kind of want to level the playing field in that. You know, if you're a basic modeler, you can sit down and not be intimidated by it. But if you're really an advanced modeler, you can do a lot with it. And even if you're not, even if you're that basic guy, you go out and buy some details and stuff. You can do whatever you want with it.
But
Yeah, well, I'll admit sometimes I'll look at, you know, a kit by Doug or by Kenny Crump or, you know, Jimmy Diekman or something, and it's a gorgeous piece of work, but you start to wonder, where does the kit end and the model mastery of the maker begin? And I'm familiar with how to make the kits, so I sometimes am able to look past that, but I'm not sure if everybody can when they're looking at a box or they're looking at a picture online, in being able to judge exactly what is the kit and what will the kit look like if I build it as opposed to the way a master modeler built it.
That's where your RPM shows and your training shows, like have Craftsman Courtyard, to have, you know, modelers sit there and answer the dumb questions. I mean, and it's not dumb questions. What I've dealt with in the groups that I've messed with the Good Time Coal Hauling group, these millennials, these 30-somethings, it's not that they're stupid. It's that they've been trained that if they don't do the very best model in the whole world ever been done on their very first attempt, they've failed and they need to move on to something else.
Yeah, and that's wrong. You learn from your mistakes.
Right, but they're not taught to make mistakes.
But another thing to go with that, Dean, is that I used to be part of the YouTube Model Builders group, myself and Bill Graham and everybody. And I was one of the ones that helped start at the Fine Scale Build series they do. Me and Mike were doing one of our shows, Mike Dettinger, when we were up in New York State. We were visiting one of our friends up there who models the Bath and Hammondsport. And we did it live from his train layout. So at the end, now this guy, he's an MMR. I mean, he's got gorgeous structures. I mean, well, at the end, he said, why are these people asking such stupid questions? He said, haven't any of them read a book? He points to his bookcase. That's how I learned to do it. And that attitude's got to stop, because they ask the question because, especially younger people, like you said, Dean, they want to learn a different way. Like, I learned better by listening to people, watching videos, you know, but I like going in person too. But I ask the questions, and that's how I learn. And if you don't ask a dumb question, you won't get the right answer. You know?
There's a 26-year-old girl that belongs to the Good Time Coal Hauling group, and she's a model plus she works as a salesman. She can outlay me on hand-laid track, and it took about a month for me to show her. And now she's saying, hey, have you ever done this? And I'm like, well, hell no, I've never tried that. But it's because, you know, it's the crawl, walk, run method.
Yeah.
And she's got a friend of hers that's even hotter, and she's started to throw together Craftsman kits. And I'm like, y'all are going to train shows with me for nothing
Yeah.
other. Then my table's going to be jam packed. It's like taking Hooters girls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I see some of that attitude on Facebook as well. Somebody will ask a question, in one of the historical society face groups or whatever. And every now and then somebody will say, well, that was discussed, like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Or look, and maybe you'll find it in a folder or a file somewhere if you dig hard enough and know what to look for.
Now, Kevin
Well,
Rubin.
I see that a lot more in some of the automotive groups that I'm involved in. I used to race cars, and I used to have a couple of cars I played with, and I'm still in some of the Facebook auto groups, and those people don't suffer fools near as well as us model hobbyists do. I think we're very good at wanting to help new people and wanting to explain how we do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the automobile groups I'm in, somebody new comes in and asks, well, how do I do this? And they said, well, we talked about that last year.
Yeah, I see that. I belong to a lot of groups on group.io, which used to be, that's where everybody from Yahoo groups went to. And they're the same way,
Oh, God, yeah.
So I'm very cautious. When I answer people, I try and give them the answer they need. I don't give them a bunch of crap about why you're asking that. Don't you know how to search? Can't you Google that?
Yeah.
It's like some people aren't good. I know guys because I work in IT. I work for Jefferson Health in Philadelphia. I know guys that are way better than me at Googling the answer. My
Neil's
wife,
got his hand up.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I was just going to ask a dumb question, and I know the only dumb question is the one you don't ask, so I thought I'd ask. With the advent of this kind of medium and the internet, you guys who are creating kits, your instructions could be all online with a lot more photographs of how you progress through building a model, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I learned building architectural models by making massing models. And then from massing models, you turn them into a little more realistic. Pretty soon you're doing interiors and you have telescopes. And then, later on in life, you start doing colors and textures and finishes. And you can take it from one extreme to the other just with photographs and just posting them online for us to look at.
What's
you don't have to show
interesting?
the weathering.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, I've looked into that. Jimmy Degnan at Railroad Kits, soon to go to Bill Sator, I guess. He does that. All of his instructions are online. You buy his kit, there's no instructions in the bag.
Mhm.
I've talked to other folks about doing that, and their opinion is they're afraid people will just copy the plans and go out and scratch build using their plans. So that's the counter argument that I see about that.
I don't see the need to produce plans online. I don't see the need for plans at all. Just photographs of building the kit in a sequence, right? And you not even need to show how to weather or paint it, but obviously those of us who do this a lot know that it's easier to paint them while they're flat and move on from there. But those are the kind of things you can teach.
Something that I just ran into last week that is in line with what you're saying. I just built that little HVAC system for the roof of that building that I showed earlier tonight, and the kit is put out by Rail Scale Models, but it was originally designed, and the ownership of all the design still belongs to Rusty Stumps. Well, Steve Milley at Rail Scale Models put it out, and in his very brief instructions about it, he says for a complete list of how this was built when it was a Rusty Stumps model, he has listed on his site in his how-tos about an 8-page build with photos and everything that somebody at Rusty Stumps had done when it belonged to them. So he made it possible to go online and look at how this person built it. I think his name was Ed. And that's available for that kit. Now, I don't know if that's because it was easily available from Rusty Stumps. I don't think Stephen does that with any of his kits. I haven't seen it.
He does not. Yeah, he does
Okay,
not.
but I think that was a real nice little useful thing, and probably why he kept his instructions that he offered with the kit very brief.
Yeah.
It's
When I
interesting
build,
you mentioned Rusty Stumps today because I got an email saying that they're open again and they're have products from N through O scale, right? Including S scale, believe it or not.
I wonder if they're going to get back all their doors and windows from rail scale models.
I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about that. Yeah, they got a lot of detail parts and stuff, but maybe structures coming. But I love their doors and windows. So, if I had to, I'd order from rail scale then. But I would just.
Well, I was also glad to see that Monster Model Works, that Jimmy Simmons is coming back with that. Because, oh my God, his walls and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a few of his kits, and they're great.
Mm-hmm.
There is a group that Jimmy Degnan runs.
Railroad Kits.
Modelers Forum.
Yes.
If you look at that, a lot of these structures are done as progress, and there are a lot of good modelers in that on that board.
Yeah.
Modelersforum.com.
Yeah.
That looks familiar.
Here's a Monster Model Works.
The Monster Model Works.
That I just finished this about a month ago.
Oh, that somebody's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Jimmy Simmons brick.
Yeah,
Very pleased with
his
how that
stuff
came out.
is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's all laser cut, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's laser cut, laser. I actually listened to he was on the Workbench podcast not long ago, and I listened to it. And he talked about how he actually, like for stonework and brick, he will actually bring in a photograph of the actual surface and turn it into the file that makes the etching map.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we get such great detail, because it works like what's called a bump map in 3D modeling.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a really detailed surface in a 3D model, you don't build it. A flat surface, and you create like a grayscale file that has different colors for the different layers and details. And then the renderer turns into the actual raised and lowered surfaces and shadows and everything. Yeah. But you got simple rectangle for the actual part you've modeled. And that's what the lasers do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he actually, when he got his first laser cutter, he told the company what he was going to be doing with it, and they said, "You can't do that with this." And he said, "Yeah, I think I can."
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah, but if it can engrave rather than just cut, then you can do it. You just need, he has an expensive epilogue, but there's other laser ones that if you can do laser engraving, you can control the depth of the beam, then you can do all kinds of crazy details with it.
There, you can even do that on your Cricut. Just score it.
Yeah, I haven't
Get a
tried
scoring
played with
tool, you know.
I haven't played with the scoring bit yet because I haven't explored. I got to play around with that yet because I have a project in mind to work on. But right now, I'm building an ON30 pizza box that's in an 18-inch pizza box. So I've been building clever model kits. This is their Skippy's hot dogs. I turned into trackside pizza, and I got LEDs in the sign, and I took a piece of clear rod with 2 micro LEDs on the ends inside and turned them into fluorescent tube lights. So I got to put a wiring board I got from Bill Sartor inside to make some of the LEDs in the sign flicker. And then I'm on to the next cardstock building. So I've been playing with that for a while.
Good. Looks good.
A quick question, Greg. The barnwood stains. Now, who made that again?
They're made by the, I think it's Smart Craft, whatever Michael's house brand is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you find them at Michael's.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's Craft Smart or something like that, but it's their house brand. And it's a 2-part. The stain kind of just looks like a basic brown stain. But then the wax that goes over it, these are designed for people who maybe you're making a dresser and want it to look like barnwood. So you put the wax over the stain after the stain dries, and then they say, use a comb or a card or something to engrave the wood grain in the wax, and then you wipe it off afterwards. Now, for our smaller scales, I started using one of those carders that you use for. It's got all those fine little wires on it that they use for yarn and stuff, and that got me pretty close to wood grain on those strips of wood.
Yeah.
But it was when I turned them over after staining them and I saw where it bled through, and it almost gave it that kind of like it was covered with mold, and some of it was eaten by, algae and stuff.
Yeah.
That was like gold. I said, oh, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, I got to try that. That looks pretty interesting.
Hey, Greg, have
Yeah.
you tried to just alter some of the teeth on your jeweler's saw? Because it's a hacksaw. And
I used a jeweler's saw at one point, and it was a little too even, and they were too big.
right, if you alter the teeth pattern on it, with just knocking the teeth off of it.
Or just run it through the garbage disposal or something.
Well, usually what I do, I take my smallest flat bastard file
Yeah.
and just hit a couple of them, and it'll make it real ugly. I mean, you can take and scrape it, because that's what I have to use for HO scale ties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a variety of different wire brushes, and I was using the carding brush because it was the one that I had at hand. I've got a couple more that when I play with it some more, I'll probably, have a variety of different wood grains that different brushes will make in it.
Yeah, I use a file card, which is used for cleaning like mill files and bastard files. And it's
Okay.
got real short, maybe 1/8" hard steel brush tips, and they're real close together. So you can just go like this down to wood and get all kinds of interesting waving pattern. And a few strokes on a board, you generate some sawdust.
Yeah.
And your comment about putting it in the dishwasher or the disposal,
Proposal? Yeah.
you've been married long enough, as have I, that hobby stuff don't get used with household appliances. Because I cleaned a set of heads in the dishwasher, and I ain't heard the end of that shit yet.
Oh,
Well,
seriously? Oh my God!
Now, hold on. You all have to know that Dean's been through 3 or 4 wives. So
Now we know
the
why.
right one, because when I used to race motorcycles, I had to replace the bearings in my vertically split cases. And the way you do that is you put the case in the oven and you put the new bearing in the freezer. And once the case is expanded, you drop the frozen bearing in it. So after about 6 months of that, our oven always smelled like castor oil. And
Oh God, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, the joke is that I get married every couple of years because I like that new wife smell.
Oh my God, that's too funny.
I can save you some time. Just go out and find someone you don't like and buy them a house.
That's what I told victim number 4. If it doesn't work out the next time, I'm going to just build a house and go to the mall and just throw the keys to a random woman. Say, there you go.
Might be cheaper in the long run, Dean.
It is. I was going to tell y'all, by happy accident, the Cold Stone countertop people, they do all the epoxy stuff on YouTube. I got some of their clear. And that epoxy is the perfect stuff for creeks and rivers and stuff, because you can't mess up the mixing process. If you don't get enough activator in it, it just takes a little longer. I mean, if you put 1 drop in there for a cup this size, you'll be ready to work on your river in about 2 months. But you can't mess it up. And
Wow.
the shit doesn't bubble. It doesn't turn colors. It
Nice.
doesn't creep. It's the greatest stuff in the world.
Internet.
Hey, Chris, if I can share something real quick, I'm curious if Barry can tell if this is the same kind of tool that he has. If I'm able to,
Yeah.
and I won't put up anything bad.
Only if it's
Never
porn.
done that tonight.
No. Okay, let's see. Okay, that's it right there.
Pretty much, yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. See, I thought that was something used for what they call carding.
No,
Where-
no, that's for cleaning mill and bastard files.
Mine
Okay,
looks just
well-
like that. Yeah.
Well, that gave the texture on that strip that you see right below it, and that's had the 2-part on it, and then you kind of wipe the wax a little bit and then create the grain on it.
Yeah, that would work perfectly for that.
It comes out pretty good. Now, I also have a picture here of that's how it came out when I used my modeler's saw, and it would probably be fine in O scale, but it's too coarse for HO scale.
Well, you know what you can do? Is
Yeah.
turn the saw on an angle. It reduces the
Yeah.
spacing between the teeth.
Yeah, I could play with
Instead
that.
of doing straight across, turn it on a 30-degree or 45-degree angle
Yeah.
and drag it across the wood, and you'll get smaller spacing.
So that's what the stuff is. It's called Craftsmart.
Oh, Craftsmart. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And
Thank
so
you.
I have done a couple of tests with it. This was on just a piece of wood that already had grooves in it. And it like I said, I'm still experimenting with it some and playing with it, but it worked really great for the bridge that I was building that Chris put out.
So do they have any other color of the wax rather than just gray?
No, I think that's it. Just
Okay.
the brown stain and the gray wax. Now, the wax is pretty liquidy. You could probably play with adding some colors to it.
Oh, okay.
You know? If you do, let us know how it works.
Yeah.
Greg, if you've been hanging around car groups, the detailing brushes, they're about the size of a toothbrush.
Oh, yeah.
And the metal, they come in different metal. What am I trying to say? The tines and the teeth on them are different kinds of metal, different resistance for woodworking, and I've been playing with that.
Okay. Now, I used to race cars, so I knew about detailing, but I never did it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. You guys have been talking about Bill Sartori tonight. I want to tell you a funny story. I've known Bill for years, met him on a couple of shows, and learned over a period of time that he's quite a bourbon connoisseur.
Ah.
And back in March, when the COVID thing hit Pennsylvania, the governor closed all the package stores. And I was on the phone with Bill one night. I was ordering some LEDs, and I said something about stretching out a bottle of bourbon. And he said, stretching it out? And I said, yeah, I got caught flat-footed when they closed the stores. I didn't get there. So about 2 or 3 days later, UPS showed up out front here. I'd ordered a fistful of LEDs from Bill. The UPS guy showed up, and there's a shoebox on my front doorstep. And when I opened up, there's a bottle of Maker's Mark 49 in there. LEDs marked around the edge of it. And a note that said, don't run out again.
I love Bill and Lisa.
He's a nice guy.
People.
Yeah.
He's the one who got me that LED setup that I put in the top of that Elkin station.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good people. I hope he does a good job with taking over Jimmy's.
I know that's got to be a lot of work, and I know Microlumina is still growing. So
I mean, he does some
I
fantastic
texted
stuff.
him, asked him if he was retiring, and I haven't heard. I don't know if that's the end plan or not.
Well, we'll see. You know, companies ebb and flow, especially in the Craftsman arena.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I think you put together a good show tonight. You pulled together a lot of interesting people, and I think just getting together and chatting like this has helped us all immensely.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe it's not specifically the guest that we have, but it's whoever shows up.
Yeah.
That's the important part. So I hope we can, if anybody's really interested in being what I've been trying to do is get a vendor and a presenter, whether they share a clinic or show off the work that they've done or a layout tour or, show off their dioramas, something along those lines, because I think the big key is to keep it visual. And then we can get together at the end and discuss some things.
Not too visual though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little much.
Hey, you can put the Good Time Coal Hauling group down for one. I'd love to do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll talk to my buddy Mike Dettinger and we'll see what we can come up with.
Good.
Because 2 years ago at MRU, we did a whole series in N scale where people walked away with a T-track module, and I did a waterfront scene that had the dock was made by Bar Mills. They donated it to us. Jill and Brian did the bait shed I designed for it, and then Mike had ITLA cut us and design us a custom building called Builders. And then when everybody went to the show, we had Dwarven Enterprises come in and show off their fiber optic lighting, and we lit all the modules in one of the classes with minor modifications, and it was great. And then we had a club at the Amherst show who gave us space to display a dozen of the students' modules for the weekend, which was fantastic.
Cool.
So yeah, I'll talk to Mike and see if we want to do anything. I'll let you know, Chris.
all right, sounds good.
Because
So,
we may
Dean,
be
how do
doing
we
this
get
for a
hold of you
while.
guys?
What's that, Chris?
Dean, how do we get hold of you guys? Because
Okay, yeah. We've got a Facebook page,
okay,
and you can look me up, Dean Taylor, on Facebook.
all right. Any more questions? Anybody want to bring up anything?
Well, it was nice running into a few new people here that exchanging ideas. It's always useful, always helpful, and always interesting.
All right.
Is this always on Sunday nights?
Yeah, I put it on Sunday nights because I figured that would be the best way to deconflict with other events. But
Okay.
somebody's got a better idea, bring it up, and we'll.
No. Sunday night's the best night in the world for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so far you haven't been conflicting with any of the others I've been in.
Right.
Okay, and I think when I close out this session, it's going to offer me the opportunity to have another session that's fairly similar, in that we won't have a time limit on it. So, how does August 23rd sound? That sound good to everybody?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
My calendar's free.
August
Where's
23rd.
everybody going to stay?
I'm not going anywhere.
All right, so we'll aim for that then, and I'll post something on Facebook. Hopefully, we'll get some good stuff set up here for next month then.
All right.
All right, thanks
Just take it
everybody
one
for
day at
coming.
a time.
Chris, great.
All right.
Jack,
Good
thanks
seeing
for
everyone.
guys.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
having me, guys.
Everybody.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everybody.